Hello everyone, it's Tuesday, May 7th, 2013, and this is Capital Conversations. I'm Marty Owings. Tonight we're pleased to be joined by GOP Minority Leaders David Hann from the Senate and Minority Leader Kurt Daudt from the House. Also joining us tonight is Representative Daudt Marquart, who chairs the Ways and Means, the Education Finance Committee, and you sit on the Ways and Means Committee as well, and the Tax Committee. Yeah. And also Senator Marty, who's joining us last minute, filling in for previously scheduled guests. I appreciate you stepping in on short notice, Senator Marty. And welcome, gentlemen. Thanks for being here. As always, we invite you, the viewer, to tweet us, send us a live message. If it's a question we can ask on the show, we sure will, and we'll ask the representatives and senators here tonight. Before we get into the action surrounding taxes, there's been a lot of that. Let's talk a little bit about the latest developments up here at the Capitol. In specific, the House passed the anti-bullying bill. You guys are fresh off the Senate floor. Did the bill come up on the Senate floor?
No, and I don't know. Sir Marty might know, but I'm not sure when it was scheduled. But no, it hasn't been on the Senate floor.
Okay, so that remains to be seen. Plus, a same-sex marriage bill has been passed on the committee. It's likely to get heard by both of the chambers, or a vote will be cast. Let's start with the anti-bullying bill. Let's start with you, Minority Leader. Why the controversy over the bill from the GOP standpoint? What were your concerns?
Well, it's really one more example of an unfunded mandate. Asking our school districts to carry out the policies in the bill without giving them the funding. So it's going to cut into the already limited resources that they have to educate their students. And frankly, we want to keep those dollars in the classrooms and not distract from what the schools should be doing. So.
Yeah, okay. From your standpoint, Representative Marquart, why pass the anti-bullying bill?
Our goal this year is to create the world's best workforce in education and get that around the state. And if you're going to do that, every single student has to feel safe when they go to school. They can't feel they're being bullied or threatened. We know that impacts learning. And so we think this is very common sense. A lot of schools are already, in the process of doing this. We think we can strengthen that a bit and kind of fill in some of the cracks and holes where it's not working properly throughout the state. So I think it's a good bill.
What about Leader Daudt's contention that it's another unfunded mandate? How do you address that?
Well, yes, we do provide avenues of funding. We raise the Safe School Levy $5. We allow for areas in the staff development for training of staff and so forth. Those dollars are there. Also, we do provide a 2%, about $315 million of new funding for schools that they could use for that. Is it a concern anytime we add something? Absolutely. I mean, we did that with the teacher evaluation 2 years ago, never funded that. Now, we've got to look at that because schools are continually being pressured to do things with not a lot of funding.
Well, I put the senators between you two, but obviously I might have to change positions. You guys seem to be getting along okay. It wasn't too bad. So I'll turn to you, Senator Hann. What is your opinion on this anti-bullying bill? It hasn't come, as you mentioned, to the Senate floor.
Well, it's been around for a few years, and
wasn't the language a little light before?
Well, it's different iterations over the years, but fundamentally, I think, and I'm a former school board member, I think what we're doing in the legislature is really the job of school boards, and we shouldn't do that. We have elected representatives in every school board. Every school board has policies on bullying. They can deal with this problem, and none of us, there's nobody in the state that is in favor of bullying, and we know there are instances of bullying that are failures of individuals or things happen, we understand that, but it's not because schools don't care about bullying or that teachers don't care, it's just that there are failures that occur. Passing another law at the state level, a large, costly, unfunded mandate, isn't going to solve that problem. What we do believe is that local school districts have the ability to manage this at the local level, and they are accountable to the parents who elect them. That's where this should be done. There are policies in place today. I think it is an intrusion into school board prerogatives. It is unnecessary and it's very costly. And it's, I think, frankly, not going to solve the problem. And it does raise some issues with having a state law that could create other problems that we're concerned about as well.
Well, I think that there are a lot of school districts that have been doing a good job, but there's some who haven't. I think if when the bill passes, and I think it's likely to pass, I think that the schools around the state will all be doing a good job. And I think that gets back to that. I don't think there's disagreement over the goal. But I think that once we pass this bill, we will have safer schools, and it'll be safe for all kids. And the kids who have been the target of bullying, I mean, there's nothing more devastating to one's future than to go through your education years being bullied. And I think as new techniques of bullying through cyberbullying and everything else come up, I think it's more important than ever that we have a good, strong state policy on it. I think this bill will do that.
Specifically, we haven't talked about the language that was passed. Anything in particular off the language that would raise eyebrows out there the public should know about? How does it really strengthen it? And if Senator Marty's contention is true in the cyberbullying, is there penalties against it? How's school going to monitor that?
You know, I think there are probably
that
some
was about a half a
concerns,
dozen questions.
Yeah, I know
in
it,
your
and that's fine. You know, I think there are a lot of different concerns from a lot of different perspectives. I mean, my own concern is that it is an unfunded mandate, and I think if we've got extra money to give to school districts, we should give it to them and let the local school boards decide how to spend it. And if this is a priority in a school district, then they can use the money to implement the program there. But you know, putting more money on the formula and then piling on all of these unfunded mandates, we're really not giving school districts any flexibility to really you know, reduce the achievement
but
gap
no
or improve
specifics you're in disagreement with necessarily.
There's probably quite a few of them that I am, but you know, I don't know. I mean, ultimately, I think it's a bad policy altogether, and I think local school districts should be making the decision.
Fair enough. All right, let's talk a little bit about same-sex marriage. It's maybe it'll be heard. I don't know.
Thursday.
Thursday.
Yep, it's on the calendar for Thursday.
It's on the
House.
calendar for Thursday, and the Senate's probably going to hear. Likely to hear.
We don't know when. Maybe later this week, early next week.
Right. Well, let's start with you, Senator Marty. You've been very outspoken about this, a supporter over many, many years of this kind of legislation. Let's hear from your side. What do you think it
I think
means
it's
for
going to pass.
Minnesota? And
I think it's going to pass. I think the attitudes are changing as we speak. I think they've been changing for the last decade. I think they're changing fast. When you look at demographically, I think people under 30, overwhelmingly, what's the issue? Older folks, I think they're changing attitudes too, because as it's become more safe for LGBT folks to come out and be honest about who they are, we find they're our neighbors, they're our friends, they go to our churches, their kids go to our schools. You know, we find out more about them, we find out they're ordinary people just like us. And the idea that we should treat them differently, I think there's been a huge shift in public opinion in this in the recent years. My argument is that attitude shift will continue to happen, but let's give people their rights now, treat everybody equally. And when I dropped in a bill on this 6-7 years ago, and people thought this was light years away, I think it's going to pass this year.
Senator Hann, your thoughts on this? So when you take the vote, how will you vote?
Well, I'll vote against
why?
it. I have, ever since I've been in the legislature, felt that our marriage laws defining marriages between a man and woman, that's the law today. I've always been on record of not favoring changing that law. We 2 years ago put in place an opportunity for the people of the state to take that law and codify it in the Constitution so that we would avoid having a court change that. And at the time, last election, there was a lot of debate about that. A lot of people said they didn't want to put that in the Constitution because in many cases they said we don't need to do that, we already have a law. I think that for the Democrats to say, well, the fact that the marriage amendment failed proves that we need to change the law is a complete misreading of what happened in the marriage amendment election. And I think that if they do pass it, I think there will be a huge pushback, and I think that is not going to solve this debate. It's not going to make it go away. I think what it will do is create a huge division in the population and raise some very serious constitutional issues surrounding things like religious liberty, and are people going to be able to hold their sincere beliefs and be able to speak them openly, or are they going to be ostracized or treated unfairly because they happen to have a belief that is in conflict with what the state is going to now mandate as a, quote, religious understanding of marriage? I think that is going to raise some real issues.
Well, before I get a chance here, Marty, I want to get to Minority Leader Daudt here. Well, you're in that demographic that Senator Marty mentioned. You seem, I mean, you're a younger guy.
I'm not under 30.
Well, you're pretty close. From my standpoint, you're young.
I'm in my 30s.
Yeah, good, excellent. Well, that's a win. So, what do you think? I mean, are you stand with your party on this, or is it changing?
I understand.
A couple of your national guys have come out and said,
Sure,
we're gonna
absolutely. And I
support
think I think there's room in the Republican Party for a difference of opinion on this. Our caucus has not taken a position on the bill itself. And I do have some members that have offered some alternatives that they think are reasonable and really, frankly,
talking about civil unions and
right,
stuff like
right,
that.
Exactly, and really, they feel that those are compromises that address issues on both sides of the issue. And frankly, if I were to say that we made a mistake over the last 2 years when we put the ballot question on the ballot, I would say that we only looked at what one side of the issue wanted. Mm-hmm. And what we learned in the last election is that this is an issue that deeply divides Minnesotans. So I would caution the other side of the issue from pushing too hard and really only, frankly, looking at what one side of the issue cares
You
about.
mean
because
you're trying to be helpful to them so they don't lose elections?
Well, it's not so much losing elections. I think that
I think it's about doing what's right for Minnesota.
I understand.
I think it's about what's going to happen to the social fabric of the country if you create a division in law that is going to really permanently divide people over a very fundamental issue.
Senator Marty, I'll get right to you.
Go ahead.
Well, this is a very difficult issue. I'm still undecided. I'm leaning, but still undecided. But the debate on both sides is very, very passionate. And some might say, well, let's wait on the issue or what's right. And, the conflict I have, what I'm hearing, is kind of the religious aspect on one side. And the other side is that you have marriage in statute with certain benefits, and then you look at equal rights under the law and discrimination. You have to remember, before 1967, interracial marriages were illegal in 16 states. And so I don't know if there's ever a right time, but I agree with the minority leader. It's a very divisive issue, very difficult personal decision for, I think, all legislators involved. But you can't always pick the time. You do it when you think it's right, and the folks right now think it's right to bring this
You said
forward.
you were leaning. Which way are you leaning?
Well, I won't say that. I just
See, all right.
Thursday night.
Well, on your party, you maybe have some not quite agreement even.
I understand that. I mean, I respect people who disagree on this. My only point is, I think our job as a state is to treat everybody equally, including all different religious views. My church, I'm Lutheran, strong religious beliefs. I think that the Bible I read encourages us to make lifelong commitments to others, and that's Senator Hann and I can disagree on that. And I respect his right to do that. His church should never be forced to marry a same-sex couple if they don't believe in it. My church should never be banned from doing it if they believe in doing it. And to me, that's where government should be playing neutral and respecting his religious beliefs and my religious beliefs and everybody's religious beliefs. But let's treat people equally. And I know plenty of parents, same-sex couples who are raising kids, and those kids don't have the same protections where both their parents are legally getting the benefits. And the other spouse doesn't get health care benefits because they're not legally married in Minnesota. My argument is, regardless of somebody's religious beliefs, regardless of whether they think it's right, we shouldn't be telling other people they can't do it because of our beliefs. The way I heard it described by one LGBT person is, you're telling me that I shouldn't be able to get married because it violates your religious beliefs is like saying my telling you can't eat that donut because it violates my diet. I mean, let people have their own beliefs and respect those own beliefs, but let's not punish other people, deny them equal protection because some people don't think it's appropriate. So I think it's appropriate we pass it now, and those conversations, they've been beautiful conversations in the last several years. They will continue, and Catholic Church may continue for 3 decades, and that's appropriate. But we should give people fair treatment now and just let those conversations continue.
Well, if there were a time, I guess, for you to try to pass something, it seems like you've got the majority in both houses and a governor that's favorable. I understand. So, I guess you strike while the iron's hot, as they say in politics, right?
Well, I suspect that likely if it gets to the House floor that it's going to pass and it's going to become law. As I said earlier, I think that probably taking a more careful approach might be more prudent, but obviously we'll see what happens.
Well, turning our attention away from those two issues for a minute and turning into taxes, I know the Republicans have had a lot of criticism of the DFL's taxes and the governor's taxes, and the Senate tax plan has passed off the Senate floor is getting some attention from the public, because when you talk about folks making $140,000 a year as a couple or $80,000 as an individual, you're not talking about that 1% anymore. Clearly, the public's come forward and had some things to say about the Senate's tax bill. House bill sounds a little bit more moderated to some extent. Who wants to talk on this?
It's more tax. I wouldn't call it. I think they're the ones that look like the moderates with only $1.8 billion in tax increases. Ours is $2.65 billion. 2.65 billion and about another $300 million in fees. And what's shocking is, on average,
but a different tax,
different
taxes,
types and
different mix,
and different things in both bills. And I think obviously that gives them a little more tools in the toolbox when you go to conference committee. But the thing that to me is staggering about this, to put it into perspective, it's on average $550 more for every man, woman, and child in the state of Minnesota. Now, not every person's going to pay that. Some are going to pay zero, and some are going to pay 5 times that. But that's the amount of money that we're talking about, increasing taxes so that
that's
state
not a
government
subtle
can spend more.
differentiation.
$550.
But I mean, your differentiation when you said some won't pay and some will pay 5 times that, that's
Sure.
a significant point in the presentation of the issue.
I'm just talking about the staggering amount of money
That's
that we're talking about.
okay.
And yes, and some are going to pay zero on the income, but every Minnesotan is going to pay more under this tax bill. Every Minnesotan will. 31% of Minnesotans are going to pay higher income taxes, state income taxes, under the bill that was passed off the House floor. That's not the 2% that we talked about in the campaign trail. 31% of Minnesotans will pay more state income tax under the bill that was passed on the House floor. Every Minnesotan, beer tax, cigarette tax, every Minnesotan's going to pay more.
Now I'm glad I put the senators between them, because he's getting excited.
The folks were very clear that they really wanted 3 things. And I think we've lived up to those promises with the DFL budget. They wanted us, number one, to solve the budget deficit without gimmicks, without shifts, without any of this fancy stuff. And we've done that. You have to remember there's a $627 million deficit. And then number 2, we owe the schools $854 million. So we're $1.4 billion in the hole before we even get to the starting line. What we're going to do is balance the budget, not only in this biennium, but the next biennium will be budgeted or balanced. Number 2, we pay back our schools. And then number 3, people didn't just want us to do that. They want us to invest in what makes this state great. So what we do is invest very significantly in our goal in education of building the world's best workforce. Will have huge benefits to our economy into the future by funding all-day kindergarten, early ed, and so forth. Almost about $270 million in property tax relief. We freeze tuition on college students, add 3% to nursing homes. I think when you look at that overall, it moves the state forward. And to put things in perspective, if you're making basically less than $400,000 and you have a drink a week and you don't smoke, you're going to pay about 70 cents a week, less than $1 a week. And what do you get? A world-class education, huge property tax relief, education tuition freeze, and our nursing homes taken care of. I think that is a good deal, and it's lived up to our promises to help the middle class.
Senator Hann, you look like you've got something to say.
The thing that's remarkable to me is that we all acknowledge we've got a $627 million problem, which is the difference between the increase in revenue that we all acknowledge we have and the increased forecast in spending. Well, if we really wanted to raise taxes to solve that problem, why don't we raise $627 million in taxes instead of $3 billion? There's something wrong in that equation. We're saying, well, we've got this $600 million problem, let's raise $3 billion in new taxes. Clearly something else is going on here. There's an 8% increase in spending in this budget. And that is really the fundamental problem. And there is not a lot of reform in this budget. This is another part of the problem. We're having a lot of constituencies who are being satisfied with the budget, and I can understand that. It's been 20 years since you've had DFL majorities in both houses that are now asking for and expecting to be rewarded for their service to the party, and a lot of that is happening. But there's not a lot of reform in the budget. You look at education, there's a lot of money being spent in education, but in the Senate bill, $50 is ending up in the formula directly going to school districts for general fund. $50. And after the bullying bill gets passed, that's going to get cut down to about $30. So $30 in discretionary money to school districts to use for education in this big $3 billion increase in spending. This is not a good bill, and this is not a good approach.
Yeah, let me jump in here a second, give you others a chance to respond to, but Representative Marquart, I want to challenge you a little bit on the fancy, gimmicky stuff. It's fancy because it's complex, right? I mean, I understand that running a state budget is not the easiest job in the world. Just look at Stinson when he comes out to talk about it. He looks depressed, anguished. He's always, grizzled. I just say that it is complex, and if you're starting with that $1.4 billion deficit, for the layperson out in the public, wouldn't they want to challenge, well, then why increase the tax even more to go beyond what you could make up in that difference? I'm just thinking of the layperson out there who might think of these esoteric terms as, hey, what's going on up there?
Last biennium we actually cut over $2 billion, actual cuts, and those were permanent cuts. And so there wasn't a lot of balance there. What we wanted is some balance. And
we had a $6 billion deficit.
Absolutely, and those were tough decisions to be made, but it wasn't balanced. And I think what happens here is there certainly has to be revenue on the table. There has to be. And the public did not want
we actually created $3 billion of surplus revenue in the current biennium with the budget that we passed. Because the economy grew and created jobs. So we did create revenue. In fact, we created more revenue in a budget that you call an all-cuts budget than you do in a budget that we call an all-tax budget. And I think Minnesotans understand that what's right for the economy is let Minnesota's economy grow and let Minnesota's economy create jobs, and every Minnesotan will benefit.
But you've got to remember that you borrowed another $600 million from schools, and basically
we paid all
sent
of
out
that
a
back
bond
and
issue.
$900 million more that you borrowed from schools.
Then why do we have
so
a budget?
let's not lose the facts in the conversation.
But let's not lose the fact that despite everything you just said, we're $627 million in deficit. We owe the schools
down from $4.4 billion.
million.
That deficit in the next biennium was $4.4 billion the day that Republicans took over, and we reduced it to $627 million.
It's a good thing Barack Obama's helping our national economy, which helps Minnesota.
That's what I was.
So that is good.
The point I was going to.
I think we'll give some credit to the president.
It's not just the Republican Party, but it is interesting that whenever times are tough, it's for the Republican perspective, it's Barack Obama's fault. When times are good, we saved all the money. And I'm not saying that that's a one-party thing. I mean, both parties tend to do that. Let's not say that because of what you did last year, cutting things, that things are all of a sudden rosy, because they're not. Rosiness is because the long national recession, which is international recession in many ways, is coming out of that, and that's good. But I don't think we should pretend that because you passed a budget that slashed funding for a lot of very important things, that made the economy better, because I don't think it did.
Well, it seemed like there was some reform in the Republican 2.0 reform plan, and that even Democrats, Senator Marty, in defense of the Republicans for a moment here, Democrats agreed that there was some reform needed and looked at some of the measures and said, hey, it looks good.
We did a lot of reform. And just, they talk about slashing the budget. We did not. We spent more money last budget than the budget before. The budget grew. And we put over $1 billion, $1.1 billion in the Health and Human Services increased spending in the budget that we passed. The budget they're proposing this year is only going to increase the spending by about half a billion.
Well, in fairness, Senator Hann, the House members weren't too happy with that Health and Human Services budget. I know, I got an earful from Abler. So,
but my point is that to characterize a $1.1 billion increase in spending as cutting the budget, when they're proposing a $500 million increase and calling it a good budget, that doesn't even make sense.
Well, can't people out there in Minnesotans, you can answer, Senator Marty, if you like, can't Minnesotans expect that we can both invest in our citizens and education and things that are important and come forward with a balanced, fair budget that helps business grow and
I think that's economy? What I think both parties argue that that's what they're doing. I would say it's important to invest in education and human services. I'm disappointed with our human services budget this year. I think that you invest in people, you have a better economy. And I think when you look at the national economy for every report in the last 6 months is private sector jobs are growing, but it's being offset because of government layoffs. we would have, if we were not laying off folks because of the federal sequester and so on, we would be having, our economy would be doing far better. That's a federal issue, but the point is, I think that if we invest in our schools, we invest in our people, we get the ounce of prevention that's worth a pound of cure. We take care of people's problems up front, we reduce costs in the long run, and we're spending money on court costs and prison costs because we don't do enough to address mental health, chemical dependency problems.
Well, we're over time, so I just got a couple of quick fire questions for you guys. Please keep your answers brief if you could, because I know you got to get back to work. The Mayo Clinic, something going to go on for them there? Is that still on the table?
Yeah, we have a plan, I think, in both tax bills.
Tax bill.
And I mean, you look at that tax bill, something
Has it
we
been
didn't talk
scaled
about.
back, Representative Marquart?
Well, it's changed a little bit from
Changed
all
the funding
bonding
source.
to there's a little bit more local revenue coming in. I think the funding source now is a
Some
little
mix of
bit
TIF,
different.
or is it?
I'm not sure exactly
No,
what the new
boy.
funding source
They
is.
have local options for whether it's a sales tax, whether it's a restaurant tax. They have a lot of
It's a
local
little
options.
different.
The I guess what's being labeled the Vikings stadium boondoggle now by both parties. No one seems to be satisfied with what's worked out there.
agree on that. David
What's
and I
the,
agree
what's
on
the
that.
story with that? Any chance you're going to hang the bill on Ziggy, or what?
You know, I think you've got
what's
to
going
ask
on?
the majority, and ultimately, you know, I think everybody got sold a bill of goods. People came in and testified. Even the governor said that this was going to be a good funding source. It obviously is not. The revenues are coming in far below projections.
Never buy medicine off the horse
well,
cart.
And you know, the real problem is the taxpayers are on the hook for this. It's
Yes,
gonna, you know,
right.
the backstop is the general fund, and I know there's some stuff that's going to kick in, but they don't. You know, you can't collect seat licenses and some of the other stuff until the stadium's actually built and
Sure.
open. So really, I mean, this thing's going to backstop in the general fund.
Your leaders are meeting with the governor right now down in his office, I understand. What are they
Notice
doing?
we're
What
not
are they
there.
talking about? Well,
You know, when we had the budget last time, the minority was always there, but you know, we're not there now, so we just want to point that out.
Yeah.
well, so it's just the DFL leaders
Just the
now?
DFL. There's no bipartisanship in this.
So
whole
wasn't
budget
you guys
discussion.
weren't invited to the table?
We have not been yet.
Yeah, okay. All right.
I'm not holding my breath either. We would love to
You
be
two
there. and
are
we think
aware of
that,
this?
we think that Minnesota is.
Excommunication of the GOP?
I think most.
Excommunication.
I think some of us felt when we were in the minority we were totally shut out. Never got bills heard.
You were always at the table, though.
were always at the table.
And I know nobody likes to be in the minority, but frankly, we just feel that Minnesota is better served when Republicans and Democrats have to come to the table together to come up with solutions for Minnesota, and that's not happening right now.
Okay, well, last question. A couple of folks that you guys know have come forward and announced their candidacy for governor. I know that a couple of gentlemen here have in the past dabbled in that arena. Got any special announcements today for the folks out there watching?
I would like to announce that I am not running for governor. So.
Hey, last time I heard that was Representative Emmer told me that.
Oh, well.
Yeah,
There's
2
only
weeks
one
later.
I mean it, though.
Okay.
So,
No, are you dropping the hammer? I'm running?
I'm right now. I'm focused on the legislative session. I'm not talking about anything beyond that at this point.
I assume you're satisfied with
I'm
Governor
satisfied.
Dayton's job. You won't challenge him in
Pleased
primary.
with what Governor Dayton's doing.
All right. Marquardt, it's all in your future.
Yeah, that's right.
What's with the Republican tie tonight?
Well, you know, I
What's the
thought
story?
we just bipartisanship, and you know, I have a blue tie that I wear a lot too, so it's kind of where I was at.
Well,
tonight.
thank you all for coming on the program tonight. A very interesting
pleasure.
Thank you.
conversation,
Thank you very much.
needed debate. Thanks for being our guest. All right, that's Capitol Conversations for tonight, and don't forget to join us on Wednesday, KFAI 90.3 on the FM dial, where we recap all the events at the Capitol. We'll bring you the latest breaking news from up here as the House session continues into the evening. Thanks for joining, everybody. So long. Hello everyone, I'm Marty Owings and this is your Capitol Update for May 7, 2013. With just a few weeks left in the legislative session, the action is heating up here at the Capitol. The House is meeting in session right now behind us. Here's the latest news. Yesterday the House passed an anti-bullying bill and the Senate could hear a similar measure later this week. Democrats say the bill increases the strength of law and will help reduce things like cyberbullying. Republicans, however, contend that the idea is a good one, but the Democrats have created an unfunded mandate. A same-sex marriage bill is passed out of committee and is likely to make it to both chambers for a vote. The House will hear the bill this Thursday when lawmakers will have a chance to debate its passage. And finally tonight, campaign finance bills are headed for both the House and Senate. Both measures would increase the amount of money candidates could raise. Lawmakers say the money is necessary because they have to compete with big spending from outside. For more on these and other stories, don't forget to follow us on Twitter at MNCapNews and on Facebook at Minnesota Capitol Conversations. If you send us a good question, we'll ask it on the show like we do every week. For political news and analysis from the Capitol, tune in every Wednesday at 7:30 a.m. to KFAI's Morning Blend, 90.3 on the FM dial. And check us out at mncapitalnews.com. For the Capitol Conversations crew, I'm Marty Owings. Thank you for watching. Good night, everyone.